We are likely to present our report in sometime in June. That will be after the 2nd of June. The 2nd of June is when the NSOP will pass the Division of Revenue bill. So we can't report to Parliament until NSOP has passed the Division of Revenue bill. Let's hope NSOP will be able to meet this deadline. Two, what I want to report is that around July, August, that is after we've passed the appropriation bill. In other words, NSOP will pass the Division of Revenue bill on the 2nd, hopefully. And then it comes to Parliament, we pass the Appropriation Act following that. And then later in July or sometime in August, the Minister of Finance will come back to Parliament with an adjustment budget. In other words, an adjustment appropriation. But that adjustment appropriation cannot come to Parliament until Parliament has passed the main appropriation act, the main appropriation bill, which we are just about. So I thought I would just make that adjustment will take into account all the COVID matters that would actually require that the budget be amended, as it were. But there's nothing that prevents us to ask the department where it expects changes to the baseline of the department as a result of the changes that the minister would actually be tabling later on towards the end of July or August. So for now, we're dealing with the main appropriation bill. We'll deal with the adjustments later when the adjustments are legally and validly before the committee. Having said that, let me now welcome you, Secretary, welcome all committee members, and it's my honor to ask you to then address the committee. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson, honorable members of the committee. Mr. Michael Cox will make the presentation on our 5-year strategy plan and our 1-year annual performance plan.
That's Mr. Cox.
It will be all in one presentation. In introducing the presentation, I would like to indicate that due to COVID-19 epidemic of the virus, we expect that there will be adjustment and changes, especially on the annual performance plan. And there will also be adjustment and changes on the budget that is for this allocated year. As we can indicate now that because the President has deployed the South African National Defence Force to support the Department of Health and all other departments in the government's fight against the COVID-19 epidemic, an additional budget has been requested, and we hope that it will be properly processed, and we hope that the members of the Portfolio Committee will support the additional allocation of the budget to the annual financial year budget of the Department of Defense, so that we can be able to meet the targets and requirements that were not foreseeable when we submitted and tabled this 5-year annual, 5-year strategic plan and the annual performance plan. With those introduction remarks, I will then give the floor now to Mr. Michael Cox to present our 5-year strategy plan and our 1-year annual performance plan. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you so much, SecDef. We have asked the department to present, starting from, I think, slide number 38. That is your Part C information. And then right through till the end of the information, I think there's to the end of the presentation. However, in between, we don't want you to present things that appear to be, needing no explanation. Where we need explanation, SecDef, is where, for example, there's a change to the baseline target. For example, we are increasing or you are decreasing. That's one. And two, when we deal with the budget, we also would ask you to talk to areas where there's a change to a baseline allocation, where there's a significant increase or a significant reduction to the budget. I'm saying this to try to save time because we only have been given, we have 2 hours. The 2 hours was given to us to conclude this work. So I will then give you until, say, about 1:45, and I will assess how we are doing. If we would still need time by then, I will extend it right up to to 5 o'clock. But I hope you'll be able to deal with it within the next 30 minutes or so. Let me now ask Mr. Cox to take us through both the strat plan and the annual performance plan.
Chair, thank you very much. I'm not sure, should I continue? Chair, good afternoon. Thank you. It's Michael Cox speaking on behalf of the department. The directive that we have is that we should focus on 2 main issues, Chair. Those are the ministerial priorities, in other words, the departmental imperatives for the 5-year plan of the 2020 to 2025, as well as the sector and the chief's focus areas, because they will cover the APP as well. We also have a requirement here to just delve into the enterprise risks, and the risks we will touch on are included in the APP with the mitigation actions. And then there were questions from the PCD. So, Chair, in terms of the budget, the programs, the adjustments per program will be contained in the responses by the DoD to the 14 questions that we received. So, Chair, with your permission, I'll start at slide 44. And these are the departmental imperatives of the Minister, Chief and SecDef. And obviously, we need clarification. We have a team sitting around the table as well. Chair, the first one. Yes, Chair, were you going to answer?
You may continue.
Right, thank you, Chair. Chair, on slide 44, as we start with the Minister's priorities, the first one of the Minister is strategic direction, and you'll find strategic direction across the Minister, Chief, and the SecDef. And this confines itself to the implementation of the Defence Review 2015. And as you're aware, Chair, that in the past MTSF, there was no funding to implement the Defence Review, with the exception of the packages 1 and 2, which were the non-resourced issues. And what that meant is we should have focused on departmental efficiencies, either through funding models, austerity measures, etc. And secondly, development of policy strategies and plans. And Chair, you've read the APP in the strat plan. We've got a clear plan how to manage our policy strategies and plans in the department. So it's the intent of the Minister with that first priority to ensure stabilization within the Department of Defence, and ultimately to ensure that specific capabilities within the SANDF are sustained and supported, and the decline is halted as far as possible. And this will take a great level of discussion between the department, PCD, and the National Treasury and other stakeholders. Chair, in terms of strategic resourcing, to enable the Minister to source funding, this is her second priority, and this is revenue generation to supplement the inefficient fiscal allocation. And I've touched on that briefly. This is where the Minister will look at alternate sources of funding, how we can generate revenue, and this includes, amongst others, reimbursements and organizational efficiencies. A great focus of both the Minister, Chief, and the SecDef in the 2020-25 period, Chair, is human resources, and ultimately the maintaining the SANDF establishment force levels. In other words, Chair, there's a requirement to maintain the levels of that the department has, which is currently 75,000, to ensure that we are able to execute our mandate with specific reference to the SANDF. However, rejuvenation is important, that we should not have an aged force, and therefore the rejuvenation plan, which in the department is the HR strategy, which the Minister, in consultation with the Secretary for Defence and the Chief, is on the table to ensure that we remain youthful and a fit for purpose Department of Defence able to execute our mandate. On slide 45, Chair, organisational renewal. appropriate organizational form and structure. As you are aware, Chair, the military strategy has been partially approved by the Chief. What is outstanding is the force design and the force structure. From the Secretariat, the SWORD project has begun to develop a Secretariat strategy. And the ultimate purpose thereof is to ensure that the department has structures that are able to respond to our mandate, to ensure that we eliminate duplication of structures, and at the right level, we have the correct HR components in place. So, Chair, this is a joint venture between the SANDF, the Secretary for Defence, and obviously the Minister. And the capstone document that will enable that is the formulation of the Defence or the DoD strategy, which will inform these two plans, and that's in place or envisaged in this new MTSF period. The next priority of the Minister is capability sustainment. That is the maintenance of capabilities. As we've mentioned, Chair, the declining budget within the SNDF has had a direct impact on the defence capabilities across all programs, rendering the SANDF partially able to only execute their mandate. So the Minister is focused over the next 5 years to ensure that she's able to maintain, repair, and overhaul all the programs to ensure that the SANDF is able to execute its mandate. And the funding thereof, as we've mentioned, we will attempt to source from internal austerity measures, sweating of assets, etc., and we'll deal with that later on in the presentation. The third presentation of priority of the Minister is audit defence commitments, and specifically the increased contribution to the national development agenda. And Chair, I think as you are well aware, the critical role that the SANDF is currently playing in assisting to combat the COVID-19 virus. And as the priority of the Minister indicates, she foresees that over the MTF there will be an increased requirement to use the SANDF in support of government's agenda, and that's foremost of what she would want to see. However, the SANDF must retain its ability to respond to both internally and external requirements, whether they are disaster relief, whatever the case might be, audit government commitments, obviously against reimbursement arrangements in the lack of funding that we currently have. On slide 46, departmental direction, and this is again the implementation of the Defence Review. The primary focus for the MTF period, Chair, will be the formulation, as I alluded to earlier, of the DoD strategy. That strategy will inform the long-term trajectory of defence in the current fiscal climate. That strategy must enable and inform defence how its policies, strategies, and plans, which include all capabilities across all programs, should look, and it should inform the Secretariat strategy that's in development, and it must ultimately also inform the military strategy that is also in development at the moment. And ultimately, that balances the ends, ways, and means as the how within the resources that we have against government requirements of the Department of Defence. In terms of departmental resourcing, this is where the Minister has tasked both the SANDF and the Chief that we must find areas of income generation within the Department of Defence, and we would wish to maximise that income. And Chair, I believe you're aware of the DoD funding model, amongst others. So it would be the sweating of assets, and within the presentation on slide 85, the Chief has already and will commence initiatives over the MTSF, how the assets can be sweated, how unserviceable prime mission equipment can be released from service, all in an attempt to generate funding and offset critical capability funding requirements within specific certain programs. I mentioned reimbursements. Obviously, reimbursements from the United Nations requires you to maintain a certain level of serviceability, and your letters of assistance must be in place. We have a plan of action there to ensure that we maximize our reimbursements. And if you check the performance indicators, we would want to achieve at least 70% reimbursement, which is close to 2 billion rand each financial year. And then obviously implementation of cost-saving initiatives and austerity measures. And through the SECDEF and the Chief, The CFO guides the department in that regard, and I believe that we are showing effect and saving money as we move forward. Chair, I touched on the human resources element, and I confirm that the HR strategy over the next MTSF, hopefully within this 2020 APP, will be adopted, and that strategy must guide from recruitment all the way to exiting how we will manage our entire resource component of the Department of Defence with available funding, within available funding. Chair, that touches on what the Minister's expectations are for the 5-year plan. She expects both the Secretary and the Chief to support her in this initiative, which they have, and our planning instruments have been built around what the Chief and the Secretary will do in terms of performance indicators. On behalf of the Secretary for Defence, the first priority, obviously, of the Secretary for Defence is to support and assist the executive authority, as will be the Chief as well. The Secretary continues to deal with the Defence Enterprise Architecture Framework, and that framework, Chair, will ultimately guide the ICT infrastructure of the Department of Defence, which will enable us to become more modernised, efficient, effective, with accurate information that would alleviate some of the current audit findings we have. Within the plan, Chair, you would see that resource constraints within that environment continue to hamper progress in developing that framework. But over the MTSF, the Secretary will engage, and we will see how we can assist that environment as a key enabler to improve our ICT systems. Secondly, with the Secretary for Defence, as I mentioned, the Secretary will ensure that the Defence Secretariat strategy is developed and promulgated, and that, Chair, will then inform the structures within the Secretariat. And those structures must combat fraud, mismanagement of resources. There must be an effective delegation regime where delegations can be cascaded down the management line, but there must be accountability how we manage those resources. And these are all parts of discussions within that Secretariat strategy. Critical will be the application of consequence management for non-compliance. And I believe, Chair, that non-compliance finds its way systemically into the Department of Defence, and it finds expression into the audit findings that we currently have in the 18-19 cycle. And the strategy will attempt to deal with consequence management, starting at a policy level. Policies will all include consequence management for non-compliance to policy. That's the intent of the Secretary for Defence. Critical, Chair, and this forms part of the performance agreement of the executive authority with the President, ensuring ethics and accountability. To this effect, Chair, the action plan that the department has in place, Chief HR has been tasked with the responsibility for ethics in the Department of Defence as the functional custodian to develop the ethics policy, ethics structures, and ensure that ethics training is undertaken throughout the Department of Defence to renew an organisational culture of ethics and accountability. So within the MTF plan, Chief HR will give feedback on a quarterly basis in terms of progress, and this is part of Chief HR's Level 2 performance plan for monitoring and evaluation. On slide 48, Chair, still on sector focus areas, departmental renewal. This is to ensure, Chair, that the department is a department that renews itself. It doesn't stagnate, it is able to meet the changing contextual environment. To this effect, as I mentioned earlier, the enterprise architecture framework must be developed so that the department has a sound implementation of an integrated ICT system with the associated cyber defense thereof. Chair, you're aware of our aging systems, our legacy systems between HR, log, ICT, and all environments within the department, and our unintegratedness, which finds expression in the audit findings because the data that we put into the system, we cannot manage the quality and verifiability of that data on our current systems. The Secretary for Defence intends establishing a strategic research capability. This is at the highest level of the department, and that strategic research capability must inform long-term sustainability. What is the context saying? What is the budget saying? What is the mandate saying? What does government require of us? And that research must provide a product that will then inform all department policies, strategies, and plans, and our capability renewal projects and plans that we envisage as well. That will be done in the next 5-year period. Secondly, the provision of a civil legal capacity in the SecDef that is separate from the military and judicial system. The SecDef will also continue to facilitate the function shift from DPW of funds. And Chair, as you and the committee are aware, we continue to struggle with our infrastructure that is aging and our facilities that are not to the standard that is required for a department to execute its mandate. Successes have been achieved so far, and we do have development amounts coming through to the Department of Defence of just close to 3 billion per annum, but the sector will continue to engage in that issue. And then ultimately fostering a closer working relationship between the DoD and the defence industry. And in this regard, the reduction of the SDA of 5 billion rand in this financial year has a profound impact on the defence industry, and the SecDef will endeavour to manage that relationship of a different fiscal climate and how we deal with that working relations moving forward. Border defence commitments. Over the next 5 years, Chair, strengthening of defence diplomacy as our first level of defence through our International Affairs Department will be supported and facilitated through the Secretary of Defence. And importantly, as I mentioned with reimbursements, we need to have our legal instruments in place to ensure that we are able to receive these reimbursements. And obviously to ensure that when we commit our forces abroad or internally, that the legal instruments are in place. Chair, moving over to the Chief and his commitment towards the Minister as well. Again, strategic direction. The Chief will continue over the next 5 years to attempt to arrest the decline in the military capabilities, obviously supported by the Minister, supported by the Secretary for Defence, through intense negotiations between all stakeholders, but that will be the priority of the Chief, especially maintaining multi-mission capabilities. So the Chief will need to assess his capability requirements, and we will attempt to support the Chief to ensure that the appropriate funding is provided to those capabilities. Again, investment in research and development. As I mentioned earlier, the strategic research capability that the SecDef will institute, the Chief and the SecDef will work closely with that as a key lever to understand how we will have a department that is fit for purpose and our capabilities speak to strategic research, a data-driven approach. Strategic resource management, again, the Chief, as I mentioned, with the Secretary supported by the CFO, will continue to ensure procurement efficiency and life cycle management of all defence capabilities. The Chief will attempt to minimise fraud, corruption, irregular and wasteful expenditure. Chair, it's important to note at this point that these are part of the performance agreement, performance indicators and targets that the Minister has signed with the President, where there's an expectation that we should reduce all forms of fraud, corruption, irregular and wasteful expenditure within the next 5 years. That's 100%. That target has been set in our plans, the strategic plan. It will be in the level 2 plans of all the programs, and it will be managed at a corporate departmental level through a monitoring and evaluation system over the next MTSF period. The Chief also will assist with the sweating of assets. Chair, I mentioned to that, slide 58 of our presentation indicates how the Chief intends to execute that, saving a possible amount of almost 5 billion rand. And lastly, in terms of strategic resource management, the Chief, in conjunction with the SecDef, the Defence Material Division, or to dispose of redundant and surplus military equipment and assets as the Chief deems required. In terms of human resources, again, similar to the Secretary for Defence, it's to balance, Chair, between the regulars, the reserves, the civilians, and the SANDF, but ultimately to ensure that the capabilities, the HR capacity that the Chief has will enable him to conduct operational requirements as the mandate of the Chief. In terms of organizational management of the Chief, the rejuvenation of the HR component, I touched on that, Chair. We cannot become an aged SANDF and only through rejuvenation, and we hope that that will be included in the HR strategy, will the Chief ensure that he has a young and fit for purpose SANDF. Again, the alignment of preparation and personnel deployment with organizational requirements, ensuring that the force design and force structures as part of the military strategy are completed, and that the staff will migrate to that new structure once so decided by the Chief and the executive authority. And Chair, enhancing military leadership, that is critical in an SANDF to have your leadership, military leadership, and discipline is a critical issue that the Chief will focus on as well. Cyber defense, once we've established the enterprise architecture framework within the Secretariat, and we have our DoD ICT plan in place, cyber defense must be established. Chair, you're aware this is part of the national security requirements to establish a cyber security capability, both at the national and departmental level. Again, funding is the biggest constraint to establishing a cyber defense capability. But Chair, you'll agree, we modernize our ICT systems and we don't have the capacity to protect those systems against cyber attacks, the department becomes vulnerable. However, this will remain a priority of the Chief, and we will support and will give attention to this issue during this MTSA period. Chair, I've mentioned the reduction of fraud and mismanagement of resources emanating from the Minister's Performance Agreement is taken seriously by both the Chief, the Secretary, and the Minister, and every organisation in the Department of Defence has now got a performance indicator that we will measure this on a monthly and quarterly basis, and ultimately in our annual report. The Chief also understands the requirement to ensure ethics and accountability, and as I said, Chair, HR will drive that process over the MTSF to develop policy, structures, and training in terms of ethics and accountability, and our policies will include consequence management for non-compliance to policies, and that will form part of consequence management. On slide 51, Chair, the Chief's focus for capability sustainment management. I mentioned earlier on the Chief has one of his priorities to ensure that we receive maximum reimbursement for our operations. We are currently on approximately 70% of reimbursements, which is almost 2 billion rand a year. If we are able to elevate that 70% to 100%, we could ensure that more funds come back to the department, and we have an arrangement in place with the Treasury where the department is able to keep some of those funds back to the department, which will then ultimately fund the implementation of the Defence Review and the capabilities within the SANDF. The Chief obviously will continue to prioritise his prime mission equipment as key enablers to employing the SANDF, and he would want to use internal maintenance and repair capabilities where possible, and I believe this will be through the works formation for infrastructures. As we receive development funding, we're able to capacitate the works formation at a much more cheaper cost and do a lot more repair within the department and mitigate dilapidated infrastructure and facilities as we see today. The last priority or the focus area of the Chief would be audit commitments management. Obviously, border safeguarding is primary, and it's one of the MTSF priorities, priority number 7, and border safeguarding is one of the highest priorities for the Chief and the Minister and the Secretary, and the deployment of our sub-units. Chair, as you know, in terms of funding, we will continue to deploy, and you've read our performance indicators in forced employment. We will continue to deploy 15 subunits. However, we did receive our additional allocation to border safeguarding of approximately 222 million over the MTSF or EF, sorry. And these will be directed to the forced employment program to develop cyber sensor technology that can supplement the 15 subunits on the ground. So that helps us reduce the cost or not escalate the cost, but we will maintain the 15 subunits. The department's aware, Chair, that we should deploy 22 in terms of the national security strategy, but what we can afford is 15 supported by technology. And finally, Chair, it's our contribution to the RSA foreign policy objectives, whether it's through skills training, whether it's through meetings, conferences on the military side. It's a priority for the Chief to establish closer relations with the world. And all our defence attaches, 44 of the officers are deployed, and they will all support the Chief in his foreign policy objectives, which is obviously aligned to that of the national interests of government. Chair, I was asked just to go through our risks as well. They are only 3 pages long, so with your permission, Chair, on slide 653, the presenter will move to slide 53. Chair, I'll just highlight the risk. I'm not going to read it. I believe you've read all of this already. But on slide 53, our highest enterprise risks, and these straddle the 5 years of the department. And Chair, I do not believe these are anything different in the past MTSF. Number 1 is compromised defence direction. Defence direction, Chair, is how we ensure that the department is clearly guided through policies, strategies, and plans. And internally to the department, we need to facilitate this process to ensure that our policy development process is expedited. So we have policies that are real-time and meet the requirements of the department and government. We've included, as I said before, within those policies, we would intend to include including consequence management for the first time. This is already far underway. Risk number 2 is the prevalence of corruption and fraud. And Chair, they will look at our fraud prevention plans. And we hope that by establishing our ethics and moral regeneration of the department, incidences of corruption and fraud will be mitigated. However, the Secretary for Defence and the Chief, in their priorities and focus areas that I've just read, have instituted mechanisms where they attempt to monitor all cases of corruption and fraud, but more importantly, to determine the root causes of corruption and fraud. Risk number 3, Chair, high prevalence of litigation. Again, the institutionalization of consequence management might assist the department to veer away from high litigation, but it's also important that the department, as a mitigation or a risk mitigation response, should provide appropriate legal advice to all DoD command body structures, and thereby curbing costly litigation against the Department of Defence, which is currently an excessive amount. If we can reduce that, Chair, we can funnel those funds back into the department and use them efficiently and more effectively. Chair, on slide 54, risk number 4 is the deterioration of our facilities and infrastructure. Chair, I don't think I have to touch on this. You know the issue. The most important part of the risk mitigation within the next MTEF and the MTEF, we intend promulgating the overarching logistics strategy. It will prioritize all our facilities and infrastructure. We are able to leverage funding either through our our sweating of our assets, etc. We can reprioritize that towards facilities and infrastructure as guided by the Executive, Secretary, and the Chief. Chair, moving on to slide 55, and that's the last risk that I have. Risk number 5 is forfeited rights on DoD property. This is where we have the potential, Chair, if there are claims on DoD properties, the risk is that we must expedite any land claims that the defence has or foresees for the future, as these might impact on defence capabilities and preparedness of the Department of Defence. We have this integrated into our logistics plan, and the Chief of Logistics is managing this issue on behalf of the Executive Chief and the Executive. Chair, the last risk that I'll allude to is risk number 6. I spent some time, this is our outdated and non-integrated ICT systems. Chair, I've already alluded to the enterprise architecture system. I referred to the, after that has been developed, we will have a DoD ICT plan, and we will have the DoD cybersecurity strategy in place to protect our ICT systems. Chair, that in conclusion then is the requirement. We've touched on the developmental imperatives. If you wish, Chair, I could run through the budgets, but the budgets, the reduction in all the budgets are part of the 14 questions that the PCD had questions on and forms part of those responses, Chair. So that will come out in the responses by the Department of Defence. Chair, I think that covers the requirement that was placed on me.
Hello, Mr. Cox.
Yes, sir.
So, yes, fine. So you're going to go through the questions now.
I believe so, sir. Yes.
Okay.
Chair, I'm just going to ask the system just to open. And then, Chair, this will be a joint effort by the team. We didn't have much time, so shortly before the PCD, we compiled all the responses to the question that everyone who can give more clarity on is sitting around the table, and they can support us. Chair, so very shortly, we have 14 questions. Question 1 that the PCD asked, what were the internal measures in place within the department to protect members from the COVID-19? Chair, as you can see, 1A, the department has published an audit in March 2020, which included measures to protect our forces, and that must be instituted in each unit, which included personal protective equipment of soldiers and those on military bases and those who are supporting the COVID-19 operations internally. And obviously, Chair, there's guidelines and training that has been undertaken to ensure that there are no further outbreaks of this virus within the units of those members where training is being conducted. And we currently have in place people entering the buildings, military facilities are tested using scanners and sanitizers to ensure that their temperature does not exceed, I think there's 36.6 degrees in that area somewhere else. And the accounting officer is in support of this, and he is currently through the Secretariat also ensuring that guidelines are in place to ensure the safeguarding of all staff members. Chair, question 2 that the PCD asked, the DoD should advise the committee on the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic on the regional peacekeeping efforts. And again, there was a South African National Defence Force audit published, and the United Nations have in place medical support plans and life support supplies on PPEs and ventilators. And the SANDF has scheduled 2 sustainment flights to be scheduled to take place in May 2020, and rotations, I believe this is external rotations, if I'm incorrect, if I can be supported, have been stopped until the 30th of June 2020. So, Chair, I think all the COVID issues are managed by the SANDF through that instruction in 1A and 2A. 3, the committee requests the DoD to brief on plans to contain the spending on the compensation of employees. Chair, I'm going to ask Chief HR. All I can confirm that we currently do have a shortfall in the budget for 2020, as I've alluded to in paragraph 3D. For 2020, approximately 3 billion, 21, 3.5 billion, and 22, 23, 4.8 billion. That is at a strength of 75,000 people, but I'm not sure if Chief HR will want to add anything to COE.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to mention, Chair, and one of the members of the portfolio committee, to say we have met the President in the beginning of the year, and then we also have met the National Treasury to discuss the entire budget of the DoD, and HR was one of them, where we highlighted the shortfall that we just discussed now. And then we requested that there must be a consideration to offset that shortfall for the DoD. We have confirmed our position in terms of not going over 75,000 members, but we also have indicated that it is not possible for us to reduce the number of personnel below 75,000. As we stand currently, we are anyway below 75,000 because we're standing at 74,000, just over 74,000. So we're still close to 100 less members than we require in the DoD. Our force structure elements and how we prepare our forces does not allow us to reduce personnel. And that's the position that we have raised with the President, so that it is understood from the position that it is not possible for us to do that. It is something that we're working on with National Treasury. Again, and I know the meeting that we had with National Treasury, we also presented the same position, and they have made an undertaking to look at our requirements. But they did request that we must give them our rejuvenation plan, which I did sign, and we have given to them immediately after that meeting. So we're still waiting for further consultation in that regard. But as it stands in terms of reduction of COE, is not in the cards currently because of what I just mentioned, Chair. Thank you very much. But we are looking at all the possibilities not to go beyond what is actually we having on the table as it stands, because anything over 75,000 is not what we're going to do. But I think the figure of 75,000 is what we're talking about currently. I think.
Yes. No, it's fine. No, it's fine. You may go ahead, but we may have to ask you to come back to present your personnel plan to the committee. I'm saying this so as to try and curtail discussion on the personnel plan and the budget for now, because it looks as though it's an area that we need to have a serious discussion on. Okay, you may continue, Mr. Cox.
Thank you, Chair. So, Chair, the next question that the PCD had was also in terms of HR, and that's the force rejuvenation, which I'm sure will form part of the discussion as you've just directed with Chief HR. Chair, question 5. In our plan, in slide 87 of the presentation, you raised the question that the DoD intends raising $3 billion over the MTEF through the sale and leasing of redundant assets and equipment. How will this process unfold? Will Arms Corps manage the process? Which state institutions other than Parliament will audit and oversee the fundraising process? Chair, the response there is it'll be a combination of expertise. It will be driven by under the Log Division, under the CSA NDF. Obviously, there will be the use of auctioneers and Arms Corps, who are the managers, lifecycle managers of that capability. And obviously within the secretariat environment, the Chief Financial Officer will assist. We intend to ensure that the services of the Internal Audit Division within the Department of Defence, as well as AGSA, are engaged to ensure that the accounting thereof is done correctly and in terms of current legislation. That responds to that question there, sir. Question 6. The committee requested DoD to brief on its contribution to the NDP. Our NDP service supports Vision 2030 and is based on Priority 2, as within our previous planning instruments, which include economic transformation and job creation through acquisition projects. But within this current MTSF, we will be supporting Priority 6 and Priority 7. Priority 6, obviously, Chair, will be 6B in our response to you, which is social cohesion and safer communities. This is primarily how we will support priority 6, is our border safeguarding function and protecting the territorial integrity of the RSA and ensuring peace, security and stability both nationally, regionally and on the continent. And this we will obviously do in conjunction with the SAPS and other government departments if and when required. So priority 6 is more geared internally, whereas MTSF priority 7 speaks to our external operations, which are all part of our APP performance indicators under force employment. And this speaks to a better Africa world through peacekeeping operations, either through the AU or the UN, or our contribution to the SADC standby pledge. Your question number 7, Chair. The DoD should explain the relatively high cost of the ministry in the department compared to other departments, as found by the Fiscal Cliff Study report. Our response there is, Chair, that the increased costs are attributed to aircraft chartering that is required by the executive both internationally and domestically. But in addition, Chair, the funds for the Presidential Medical Unit, the PMU, which is a function that supports all former presidents' health issues, is also located within the ministry, hence the inflated budget within the Minister of Defence's office. Question 8, Chair. How will funds for capital acquisition be allocated over MTEF, given that the SDA will see its transfer reduced by 5.3 billion in the 2020, etc.? And will capital acquisition funds be reflected elsewhere as the SDA will be phased out? Our short response there is, Chair, there will be no funds for capital acquisition over the MTSF or MTEF due to the 5 billion cut. The remaining amounts that are currently within the SDA are an attempt just to deal with contracts or possible litigation against the department. However, discussions are ongoing with the National Treasury regarding the SDA funding and how one could possibly source or reinstitute the SDA funds. Chair, question number 9. We should advise as to whether there are plans to increase the strength of the Land Border Patrol, and we should explain how the 225 million that we've received additionally will be utilized. Chair, I think I did touch on this. We will retain 15 sub-units over the MTEF, and the additional funding of 2 to 5 million will be allocated within the Force Employment Program as a force multiplier to develop sensors along the border to supplement our feet on the ground at this stage. Question 10. We didn't respond to this one, Chair. I'm not sure if I can step off. This is the issue of the fence that was erected. With your permission, Chair, I'll step off this one. Question 11, are there funds allocated to provide midlife upgrades for the Navy frigates, submarines, and the Griffin fleet? How much was transferred to the various programs and for these purposes, and what are the timeframes? Our response there is, Chair, that due to the budget cuts, there are no funds allocated for this purpose. I indicated part of the Chief's priorities is to ensure funding to ensure the maintenance and upgrading and sustaining of capabilities. And this is exactly the areas that we're most challenged with. The Chief's priority, however, if he can source the 5 billion rand through the sailing of redundant capital equipment, sweating of assets, those funds will be used in terms of maritime, the Air Force, and areas where the Chief deems fit. Our second response here will be, even contracted projects will be experiencing a funding shortfall within the year of 2021. And Chair, this is an impact because these are contract variation orders which have potential litigation against the Department of Defense and may cost us more money at the end of the day. But again, we're in discussion with the National Treasury to see if funding towards the department increase in the baseline can be effected in some manner. Question 12, we should appraise the committee on the level of preparedness regarding the airlift capability as there were 2 recent accidents with the C-130. Our response there, Chair, the SAF has 2 C-130 serviceable aircraft, and one will be deployed for a sustained flight to the DRC. Your question 13, Chair, the second last question, but this is one of the longer questions. You requested explanation on increase and decreases in economic classifications of the various budget programs of the DoD. Program 1, property payments increased from 976 million to 1.18. This was an error, Chair, in the figures. The figure should not have been 976, but 736 million. And these are funds that are devolved from the National Department of Public Works, and they are earmarked by the National Treasury for payment of municipal services to the National Department of Public Works. 13B, in terms of Program 3, the allocation of food and food supplies increased from 652 million in 1920 to 742 million in 2021. This is expected to rise by 15% of the MTF. Again, this was an error that was affected when it was captured, but it relates correctly, Chair, as you said, to food and food supplies. And the reason for this increase is the recent increase on food and supplies is as a result of the over 10% increase in food prices in support of our MSP intakes. And Chair, maybe it's important to note that over the past 4 years, the inflation, the national inflation rate has exceeded 5%, but the increase in the departmental budget has been just under 2.4%. It's again projected for the next 4 years of this plan that the national inflation rate will also exceed 5%, if not more. But the departmental increase in inflation on our budget is now less than 2%. We're now at 1.8%, which means year on year, the inflation that we are not being given in our budget, we must accommodate within our operating funds, and it's depleting our budget. And this is just one of the examples. Chair 13C, again, Program 3, you asked the question, travel and subsistence increasing from 342 to 439. We say that the increase of 97 million on S&T is due to departmental changes in our S&T policy, which increased the daily allowance rate from 50% to 100%. And this had an impact on the escalation of travel and subsistence amounts. 13D, also Program 3, fuel, oil and gas decreased from 244 to 138. The reason, Chair, the decrease of 106 million is due to 2-year fixed budget cycle on our system, which was locked, and the budget manager could not adjust the budget timelessly, and that resulted in this figure only being adjusted now in the 2020 cycle. Paragraph 13E, Chair. Program 4, the allocation again on food and food supplies, an increase from 15 million to 100 million. The feedback is that the budget allocation of 15.9 million in 1920 was due to budget cuts the department received, and the increase of 100 million was due to reprioritization efforts. As you know, as the department struggles to find funding, we have to reprioritize within to ensure that we determine the highest priorities and we send the funding to where the most are urgently needed. In this case, it was ration packs for the soldiers, and that demanded that we increase the amount there to 100 million. Chair 13F, Program 5, the allocation of fuel, oil and gas decreased from 97 million to 45 million. And you asked how will this impact the SA Navy operations. The feedback there from the Navy, sir, is that the Navy will continue to execute its audit commitments. However, the impact will be felt in force preparation, and force training will be curtailed due to the budget cuts that are currently in place. 13G, Program 6, the allocation of agency and support outsourced services decreased from 428 to 261 million in 2021. How will this ensure outsourced services provided where SAMS cannot? The feedback there, Chair, is the consecutive budget cuts over the past few years has resulted in service and divisions having to reprioritize their budgets, as I've just mentioned to you. And the SAMS has indicated that the allocation towards outsourced services has always been significantly lower than the actual spending by SAMS on the outsourced services, as an intervention to curb the necessity of medical outsourcing. The ongoing reduction in medical outsourcing, however, does not achieve the level of efficiencies that are required by the SANDF within the current allocation that is given to the SAMS. When undue pressure on the cost of outsourced medical services present itself, the funding, Chair, is addressed through environments within the SAMS budget or a departmental reprioritization. 13H, Program 7. How will the additional 167 million allocated to Defence Intelligence for 2021 be utilised? The feedback, Chair, is Defence Intelligence will utilise the additional funding for Project Flute, which entails the strategic and operational surveillance capability of the SANDF and for the cyber security implementation plan. As I alluded to earlier, we'll be developing our ICT systems, and this will be used as part of the cyber protection capability to protect our data against cyber hacking. The last one in terms of this one, Chair, Program 8. You had a question. The allocation for property payments increased from 252 to 347 million. The responses, these are devolved funds once again from the NDP, National Department of Public Works, but they are earmarked by Treasury for payment of leases to the National Department of Public Works. Chair, the last question that you raised, question 14, was for Program 6 and why we classify the performance indicator availability of medical stock. Our feedback is short. The stock levels are key in determining the level of readiness of the SANDF, and hence, Chair, this cannot be made public and cannot be therefore included in our public performance plan. However, when we report to the executive, that detail is provided to her through the closed session of the Joint Standing Committee. Chair, that's my response to the 14 questions from the department. I'm not sure if there's anything else.
Thank you so much. Can we then just quickly move to slide to the medium-term expenditure trend, but just please fly over those. That's the presentation. Yes, Sir Jeff.
Yes. No, thank you very much, Chairperson. I just wanted to also add to the responses that we have provided. When it comes to the cost of employees, we just want to inform the committee that at the end of financial year 2019-2020, the year that ended in March, our shortfall on the cost of employees was about 3.2 billion rand. Since the Treasury did not support our request for the lifting on the ceiling of the cost of employees, that amount is going to be disclosed then as irregular expenditure. And as we have indicated, it is not because we have increased the number of employees in the Department of Defense. It's simply because since 2016, the cost of employees for the Department of Defense was cut by National Treasury by 3 billion rand a year. So each and every year, we're short of 3 billion. And even for this current year, the shortfall on the cost of employees is right now projected to be 2.9 billion rand. And this year, because of the COVID-19 epidemic, we will be putting it to the National Treasury that we could not reach the cost of employees. We will ask them to lift the ceiling on the cost of employees exactly because the Commander-in-Chief has determined or has commanded that we should deploy 73,000 members of the Defense Force, both from the regular as well as the reserve force. We hope that at least this year we will have a sympathetic hearing from the National Treasury, because it was beyond our control that we have to deploy to support other departments in fighting COVID-19. And also, just to add, Chairperson and honorable members, on the budget for the ministry, that the reason why it is also higher than average is because the ministry is overseeing two large departments, the defense being the very large department, but also the Department of Military Veterans, as well as the state-owned entities such as AMSCO, which maybe is the only department that you would say it has its own acquisition agency as such, as AMSCO, which requires oversight from the ministry. That increases the budget, the budget utilization or the expenditure within the ministry, but also that we have consciously moved the budget for the presidential medical team from the Department of Defense to the minister, so that the minister can have direct oversight on what is involved as the mandated requirement of the Department of Defense to support medical services, to render medical services, not only to the serving president and deputy president, but to the former serving presidents and deputy president, who from time to time travel at short notice, at some other time without any visibility or planning from our side. That it was a conscious decision on the part of the ministry and the department that this budget must be moved to the office of the ministry, and that has then led to the expenditure within the ministry higher than an ordinary minister like it would be with other departments. When it comes to the border fence that I think was referred to, we would just like to draw to the attention of on the members of the committee that when it comes to the borderline, yes, the South African National Defense Force is responsible for the safeguarding of the borders, but for the borderline fence, as well as the borderline access roads, the roads that are to be utilized in patrolling the borderline, it is the competency and the responsibility of the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure. And as a Department of Defense, we have no visibility on the project's expenditure or of such activities to develop and repair the roads, to develop and repair the fences on the borderline. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Secretary, thank you very much for the additions. Mr. Cox, I've just gone through the medium-term, what you call trends.
Yes.
We've covered a lot of them. It's just that what was missing are the figures. Let's take this information as tabled, and so that we can then move to additional questions from the committee members. If there are any questions that seem to bother on the information that has not been presented, colleagues, number one, will cite a slide where they are reading from, just to draw all our attention to it, and then we'll then deal with it at that time. Let's take this presentation as okay now. I'm worried now about the time for discussion by the committee members. Do you agree with me, committee members? Colleagues, do you agree with me? That we did now with, okay.
Yeah, Chair, I agree. Yes, Chair, I agree.
Thank you so much. Yes, no, it's fine. My apologies. It's because we are operating within this limited time, and we have to make do with what we have. With that, colleagues, now I'm putting the matter is now up for discussion. But let me check if I get your concurrence. I've recommended that we have another meeting where we get a presentation on the HR stroke personnel plan of the department. Do I get your concurrence on that one?
Yes, I would support that, Chair.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Supported, Chair.
Thank you. All right. So it means that we'll try to stay away from. What's that? We'll try to stay away from the questions that border on the HR stroke personnel plan because we'll have time dedicated to this particular item. Thank you so much. Colleagues, now is up for discussion. And that's, yes, over to you. Colleagues, I'm sure you know how to indicate, where is this thing? Where you want to speak, there's a, I don't know where it is, where you indicate. I don't know, but okay, it's fine. Colleagues, you may.
I'm ready, Olomisa.
Oh, yes, General.
And then Mare.
Mr.
Mutle.
Who's that, Tabo?
Yes.
That's Mutle.
You have me, sir.
Who's me?
Kobus Mare.
Yes, it's General, it's Mare, Mutle,
Okay,
and who else?
thank you.
Maliake.
Shelembe. All right. For the first round, I have these four colleagues. May I now start with you, General?
Thank you, Chair and colleagues. Thank you to the SecDef and his team for making this presentation. I will raise two issues. First one is the question. The second one is the recommendation. Of the last financial year strategy, what have you achieved given that you have been complaining about budget cuts? Secondly, the Portfolio Committee on Defense as well as the Defense Force Service Commission have been engaging troops on the ground. I'm more worried about, because I don't hear anything which is suggesting that they are going to address the grievances which have been forwarded by these two institutions. Therefore, I would suggest that the Portfolio Committee must summon the Minister of Defense, the SecDef, the Chief of the Defense Force, the Commission on the Commission for Defense, and possibly the Ombuds, so that we can sit at least 2 to 3 days, go through all those complaints and check whether those complaints have been integrated in this budget or in many or in budgets for the future, and whether some of the issues which have been raised by the troops on the ground do require a budget after all, or it's just a question of laziness on the part of those who should have addressed those issues. So that's my suggestion. The area which could be covered is promotions, is uniform, transport, training. Those were the issues which have been raised by the troops of during our visit. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, General. Mr. Mare?
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, I'm on. Chair, just a number of questions. My first one is the feedback on the UN refunding, which was said that we are currently on 70%. Now that I find a bit strange because in the fifth Parliament, and especially when we visited the DRC, a total different figure was given to us, which indicated that we are far below 70% potential of the refund possibility. And I can go into depth in terms of what was presented. I still have the presentations that was given to us at that stage, where 80% of the refund was based on the helicopter squadrons, which only could fly about 40% of the allocated flying hours of the UN. All of that indicated to poor maintenance, and that indicated that we could have probably doubled the refund from the UN, and not that we stand on 70%. So I would prefer to have, and I would request a much more in-depth briefing on that, because that is totally in contrast to what the actual presentations is that I still have in my possession that was given to us in the 5th Parliament. That's my first point. Then the second one, in terms of refundings, we know that the Defence Force was deployed along the Vaal River and also for other departments. Have we received any refunds from them? And what is the process in the future to get refunds from other departments? Then there was referred to the role of the Secretary of Defense with regards to defense and defense industry. And then it was referred to defense-related industries. What is a defense-related industry? Because there was nothing mentioned further on that. Then my concern that I would love to have either now or later more information is that it seems like in the next 5 years, we will still be stuck in milestone 1 in terms of arresting the decline. So how will that affect, this whole program of the Defence Review in terms of 4 or 5 years per milestone going forward? Then I want to ask, and I just want to mention at this stage, we can deal with that with the HR. We have now been informed by a force called the Auxiliary Force, and none of today's presentation, people that made presentations, referred to the Auxiliary Force, and we obviously need more information in that regard as well. Then, sir, the whole, it has been touched on very briefly, and that is the cyber technology as a force multiplier. If we can have more information in that. And then lastly, the whole question of the SDA. I know that we have been given some information, but we have also been informed that the SDA will be phased out. So what will happen with the phasing out of the SDA, and what will replace that, either as a budgetary item or as a separate independent mechanism to fund equipment and strategic equipment going into the future? Thank you very much, sir. That's all for the moment.
Okay, no, thanks. Please, I wanted to stop you because you seem to be taking a lot of time. We have limited time, colleagues. Please conserve time. Just for questions. Honorable Mutla.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be very brief. Emanating from the responses that we got, I just want to find out, I'm not sure where do we locate the works formation in all those programs that they have responded to. The reason being that, for an example, the question on the border fence, because we have resolved that the works formation should then be taking responsibility from some of the projects from the public works should be taken back to DOD and be carried by the works formation. So I just want to check how far are they in terms of implementing that, so that in future we see the reduction of that amount from that is allocated to the Department of Public Works being diverted to works formation. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Shalembe.
Thank you, Chairperson. Firstly, I would like, to appreciate, the work that is done by the department when it comes to this COVID-19 epidemic. But I don't have much there is something they raised there about, the strategic resourcing. This is about a disposal of the redundant equipment and asset. Now, I just want to know whether it is possible that the department can provide a list of those redundant equipment and the estimated value. And also, Chair, to see if they have a program of action, because I think, this program, the strategic resourcing, will assist the department as now it is running short of funds, to do, its obligation. The last one, Chairperson, is I don't know, because I know that COCTA, has put these regulations, but the other departments, are not fulfilling their promises. For instance, people are now going, to town every day, like this pay off grants. People were told to come yesterday, but when they came there was no money. So now what is going to happen now? We are going to see more people, number of days going to that to check their money. I don't know whether the department is able to engage other stakeholders, because the end of the day, the army or the soldiers are seen as like, fighting with the people when they are in town. But the cause of the people, to stay more in town is because the department has failed on the issue of giving them their grant yesterday. I think maybe they can give me whether there's anything that's being done to ensure that people are not, being abused because of the failure of this department, to ensure that what they say is what is going to happen. I thank you.
Hello. All right. I think we are done now. Colleagues, may we then, may I ask the department to supply the responses, after which I may have to take the last round of questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Before you come in, SecDef, the Deputy Minister of Defense and the Military Veterans is also in a meeting. DM, Deputy Minister. All right. So I'm actually saying, as and when she wants to come in, he is invited. He must please indicate.
Yes.
Let him in.
Chair,
Yes.
I'm with you. I will certainly do that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, DM. Okay, it's fine. SecDef.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I will take to respond, and then we'll ask also the team to assist. Just when we're looking at it now, to prepare the team, General Ramazwana, I will ask him to, although I'll say something on the Defense Works formation, if he has anything to add in that regard. And I think also to ask the CFO and the team to prepare to assist in some of the areas of the questions. Can I also ask? Okay, maybe let me just start going through the responses, and then we'll see how we divide. And also the Deputy Minister will. I will ask him to follow up as soon as we have done the responses. When it comes to the achievement in the light of the budget cuts, I would like to mention the 4 areas which are the key focus areas for the South African National Defence Force and the Department of Defence. Maybe the first one, in terms of strategic direction program, is that despite the budget cuts, we have continued to strengthen our policy development in terms of implementing the major policy document of the Department of Defense, that is the defense review.
Sorry,
that does not require.
Sorry. Maliake, may you please mute your mic, please.
Thank you.
Shelembe, please mute your mic. Then it's now speaking.
To try and implement the 2015 defense review in those activities that do not require additional budget, and also to try and bring in efficiency into the system and financial expenditures of the Department of Defense. The first focus area is safeguarding of the borders, which we have implemented over the past year with lots of challenges, as it has been highlighted in various presentations. The second area being the peacekeeping operations as an area of focus. I think as far as peacekeeping operations and our international commitments, that is commitment to the SADC standby force in particular, we have met all the targets and the directives and the commitments that have been assigned to us. On the third area, which is that one of disaster management and support to the people, despite the budget reduction, I would say the commitments that have been assigned to it over the past year, including the lockdown operation in the Western Cape from June of 2019 to March of 2020, I think those commitments were fulfilled with meeting our targets. And as it is right now moving into this year, our deployments in COVID-19, despite various challenges, we have been able. So to Honorable General Holmes, I would say, yes, we have had challenges, but we have tried to meet those challenges with whatever resources that have been made, limited as they were, that have been made available to us. We have had Honorable Holomisa on the issue of grievances that have been documented with various visits that the Portfolio Committee has embarked upon, as well as other entities such as the Defense Force Commission and others. And we will be happy to have that opportunity to inform the committee as to what we have done to address those various grievances as mentioned by the Honorable Holomisa when the opportunity comes. When it comes to the issues that have been raised by Honorable Mare with the UN refund, the issue here is that the UN will refund based on the serviceability of the available capability that we are providing in this particular case. I mean, you would not talk about the refund for the deployment of the troops, because when the troops are deployed, the serviceability of the troops as they have been deployed is 100%, unless if you have a major disaster that might affect the deployed troops. So we haven't had a major disaster affecting the deployed troops. That refund is 100%. But when it comes to the equipment, then you would say, what is serviceability and availability of that equipment, both regarding the major equipment that we have provided, which is the Oryx helicopter transport, as well as the Roy Falk fighter helicopter capability, so that you are referring now to air transport capability and air fighting capability as provided by the Roy Falk. I think that's where you would be talking about 70% of the availability. But as of yesterday, for instance, in one of the Council of Defense meeting, the chief of the South African Air Force briefed the Council of Defense that the availability now of our air capability will be greatly improved because of the funding that has been prioritized from different programs into Denel Aeronautics. Denel Aeronautics, we have recently entered into a contract and agreement with them that they will ring fence the funding that is made to the aeronautics, specifically for the ensuring the serviceability of our transport and fighter helicopter capability. And the chief of the Air Force was saying over the past 3 months he has seen increased serviceability because of that arrangement that we have entered into with the Denel Aeronautics divisions. When it comes to the Val River refund, I'm going to ask CFO and Chief Director Chibilike to put that one aside. I mean, and start making notes. I can indicate that yes, we have received the refund, but just to respond to Honorable Marais in terms of how much might have been outstanding. If please, you can make that note to support our response. When it comes, the difference between the defense-related industry and the defense industry, I guess, is more of a semantics. There are certain defense-related industry. You would take, for instance, an IT company that provides various IT services that are utilized in developing the avionics or the that are developing certain electronic systems for the ships, aircrafts and submarines and others. You would refer to such an IT or electronic company that will do electronics for other systems as well, dual use as it were of such systems, as a defense-related company, but you would then refer to Denel that manufactures armored personnel for defense as a defense industry company, but the other one as a defense-related industry company that is producing support system to the defense equipment. When it comes to the defense review, I think Honorable Marais, we concur with you. Yes, we have had a 2015 defense review with 5 milestones that were to be implemented over 5 years each, and that was still in the first milestone, but even that first milestone of arresting the decline have not been able to be achieved, and simply because of the limited funding. In other words, the availability of funds for that. But we hope that now that we are all becoming out of Parliament in particular, and the government of the day, and the civil society at large, of the importance of the Department of Defense, not only during peace times, but also during times when certain threats are looming over our society. More and more important motive for appropriate funds now milestones, as highlighted in the 2015 Defense Review. When it comes to the auxiliary forces, again, the terms that we are using, where you talk about the regular force, you talk about the reserve force and auxiliary force being certain people who might be called in, who might not be members of the reserve force, but called in as needed basis, as you might have seen when we call in different doctors sometimes to assist the South African Military Health Services, or we call in certain engineers or even chartered accountants to assist us with different planning projects that we might have. Maybe I should be referring to Honorable Marais as a member of that auxiliary force, if we do call on him from time to time to assist us with our projects. And when it comes to the, I don't know, Honorable Marais, on the force multiplier, but force multiplier is the term we usually use to various departments with COVID-19, that certain equipment will be definitely required for the South African National Defence Force to fulfill its requirement. But the major projects that are directly affected as we speak now that we are focusing on are really related to those such as the what we call Pyro project and what we call the Woofage area. I think those are the two main ones that are immediately affected as we speak. That if we don't get a rescue, these projects will run into some difficulties in the medium-term strategic framework. Honorable Muhle, you have raised question of the Defence Works formation, but I can ask General Maswana to come in there, that the development of functions from the Defence Works formation will fall under the logistics program logistics support program. But General Maswana, I think, will come in there. Safe to say that no, so far, Defence Works Formation is not responsible for the fence, and it is not responsible for the patrol roads on our borderline. And for the disposal of redundant equipment, unless General Maswana, you want to come in, but my response was going to be that question, maybe if it can be related to the AMSCO, because AMSCO is our expertise and our acquisition agency. It is the one that looks into the when we have identified the equipment, AMSCO does assessment of the equipment, whether is it redundant, is it recoverable, and it puts in value on it. And once they put in value, they start the process of disposing it and collecting the necessary funds around the revenues of disposing it, and allocate the revenues or put the revenue back to the Department of Defense as needed. I don't know, Honorable Chelembe, on the issue of the social grant. I heard you. All I can say is that I agree with you on the challenges that we're facing on the social grant, and we have not been that much involved except when requested to support in whatever form as part of our COVID response, COVID-19 epidemic response. Thank you very much. Maybe CFO and General Maswana, I will hand over to you now. Thanks, Chairperson.
Thank you so much, Sir. Colleagues at SQ.
Thank you, Sir. The only one that I will cover is the issue.
Please introduce yourself, the CFO, eh?
Yes, POS of Kenya, the CFO. The one that I need to explain is in terms of the SDA. The SDA, there is a continuous engagement with National Treasury at this point in time. I said that put it correctly to say there is an estimate of that budget cut. But at this point in time, we are still engaging with National Treasury if they can not to cut that budget. Because it got a lot of implication, because there are projects that are running as we speak. Now, if that budget is cut, it means we will be having a lot of liquidations, and then we might find ourselves into a very big problem. It's 3 projects that are running as we speak, because out of that 5 billion, 800 and something million, 400 is allocated to water, and the balance was allocated to bio. So at this point in time, Chairperson, we will be preparing the financial statement as we always do. Okay, so there is no way that we are phasing out the SDA. Thank you.
Chairperson, Major General Ramachana, Chief Military Policy.
Thank you so much.
Chairperson, just to respond on the 2 areas as assigned by the Secretary for Defense. The first area, Chairperson, relates to the Defense Works Formation, and the SecDef has really covered the major concern in that regard, that is in relation to the fence. So what I would like to add, Chairperson, is just the area of, in terms of taking over the function as we were supposed to do, where are we in that particular function, in that particular area? And where we are, Chairperson, is that we have taken over the municipal functions, and the municipal function are in relation to maybe the leases, the electricity, and other related issues that are in relation to the municipal function. We've taken over in that regard. And with regards to the entire facility portfolio, what has happened is that we do have a structure in place, and we are in process with that. And along with the structure that we do have in the department, which is going through the departmental approval process, we are also looking at staffing professionals, and in this case, the engineers in that environment. And as soon as that is done, we then assume the functions in terms of the entire facility portfolio for the Department of Defense. And moving over, the question with regards to the redundant equipment, again, in this regard, the SecDef has provided an answer to it. But I think what I just want to add is to say that in the main, AMSCO is involved all the way, as the SecDef has said, especially when it relates to Category 1 types of equipment. And this will mainly be your A and B vehicles, as we call them, some of them being personal carriers, etc., those that will be redundant as would have been certified. And that is where you get now the involvement of AMSCO. But we necessarily do not exclude AMSCO, even if when the matters goes down to Category B types of equipment and your general commodities there, including the Chief Finance Officer when it comes to areas of funding, and the person that is leading in this regard will be your Chief Logistic, who get all the stockholders in place. So, Chair, this is what I can say in this regard, and as assigned by the Secretary for Defense. Thanks, Chairperson.
Thank you so much, General. I think, let me just check I think all questions have been covered, except one thing. It means that the list of items that we need to have a separate meeting on is increasing. It was HR plan, 2 grievances, 3. I'm tempted to add this defense works formation thing, because when we informed about the devolution of functions from the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure to the Department of Defense, we all celebrated it. But just recently, I found out that it's not only the Defense Force that was given this function of paying for leases and electricity, the municipal services accounts. The Department of Police as well. That function has been devolved to them. So our interest is more on the whole, what you call infrastructure portfolio, because we think we can build capacity within the Department of Defense. We can build artisans, we can build, and we have engineers. Really, you could do a lot more in terms of maintaining your infrastructure. So what has so far been devolved to us, to me, it's really but nothing. The police have received this devolution, and I'm not too sure if they're excited about it. Yes, because you are paying for your municipal services accounts, but it's not the nub of the issue. The nub of the issue is a whole infrastructure portfolio that will actually bring our own camps, our own clinics, our own sick bays, our own what you call accommodation facilities to a state where we can be happy about. Okay, having said that, I will now check. DM, do you want to say something? DM?
No, Chair, thank you very much. In the interest of time, I think we should accept the information provided by the department on the areas where inquiries were raised. Of course, more can always be added. Suffice to say that some of the questions that are clear concerns, they are well placed. Concerns, for instance, in relation to consciously, as we are moving on, making sure that at the end of every financial year, there is something that we have purposefully achieved with the limited resources that we have, which we had planned to attain. And similarly, with respect to the grievances and the challenges with around our personnel, the troops themselves, it is something which, of course, we've got to make sure that we tighten up the processes of ensuring that the grievances, where it implies financial shortages, when we budget year to year, we must make sure that these grievances are minimized. It is something that we can only seek to ensure that there is improvement as we move on. With respect to the concerns about the refunds to the Department of Defense for the services we render, I must say that I now appreciate that this is a department that is forever caught up between the rock and the hard place, because it's an emergency department. It's an emergency department. They are now and again called upon to deal with urgent problems, and for them to say, not until you pay shall we come to your rescue, would politically be found to be unacceptable. So they act most of the time, and when they expect to have their costs, covered by those they provided services to. I mean, including even our own, within our own sister departments. I don't want to, go into, the nitty-gritties of the kind of challenges the department is facing now in relation to responding to COVID-19 challenges in supporting other departments, and how slow is the process of the other department honoring their financial obligations to the Department of Defense. So it is a department, it's an emergency department, a service providing emergency services. There'll always be that continuous challenge that the money we spend is never at times refunded. But as I'm saying, I'm happy with the information shared. More can always be conveyed in the process of our work. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, DM, for the
I'm sorry, I think we can't hear you. Something has happened on the system.
No, thank you so much, Secretary. No, I'm saying, colleagues, in view of time, I want us to end the question session now. But I must say we have really done justice to this inquiry. One, we met on our own, and then from that meeting, we developed a long list of questions that we sent to the department with the request that when they present, they must incorporate the replies thereto. I think they've done exceedingly well on that aspect. And that was the first bite. The second bite is now when we once again, had a question with, we're able to pose questions to the department. I think they've come back and they've answered those questions. And then I think the last bite would be when we deal with those focus areas that we have actually identified. The first focus area that we think we must have just a separate meeting on is the HR plan 2, the grievances, and 3, the works formation, aspect. So those are the 3 areas that we will put on the agenda for our next meeting, and the way we would have enough time to deal with them. So with that, colleagues, I think we can conclude our discussion on the budget. But before we close the meeting, initially I said to deal with the minutes. Colleagues, I want to take the minutes as read. Do you agree with me that the minutes correctly reflect our discussion at our last meeting?
Chairperson, Kobus Maree, yeah?
Yes, Maree.
I not all my questions that I've posed, some I've now submitted today, but not all my questions that I have raised, that I've took note of precisely what it was not in that minutes reflected. So I can forward that to Brian if you want to, that it can just be added to that. But it was like the phasing out of the SDA and also the 1.9 million about the UN. So those were the questions that was not reflected in the minutes. As I said, I can just forward that to make sure that Brian include that into the minutes, and then we can proceed. Yes.
No, Mr. Maree, the meeting of today will reflect on those questions. Because consider the 2 meetings as one. The one that we had where we come through the budget, and this one.
Yes, but it still didn't reflect all my points that I've raised. So, I mean, I can easily support it with that inclusions. But I mean, you've asked for the corrections, and I'm just raising that.
No, it's fine. I will welcome those questions. I will also check that against the list, my own notes. No, it's fine. We will look into it. As soon as you are able to send them to us, we will then forward them to the department for the replies. Okay, so you accept the minutes with that amendment. Agreed?
I do.
Thank you. Colleagues, any objection? All right. The minutes are accepted. Colleagues, is there any objection that we must end the meeting now? There being no objection, it remains for me to thank you, DM, Deputy Minister, SecDef, and the team at HQ for the excellent way that you have handled your presentation and the way you have dealt with the questions. And please convey our word of appreciation to the Minister. With that, I now it's my pleasure to call off the meeting. And please safe trip back to whoever would be traveling. And thank you so much. The meeting
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and thanks very much, members of the committee and Deputy Minister. Thank you.
DM, thank you so much. All right. So, colleagues, the meeting is closed. Thank you so much. So, thank you. Thanks, General.